In today's Farm Report, some producers may have put in small grains or peas for a forage crop and are looking to start harvesting. Dan Martins with the University of Minnesota Extension Service Office has more.
Gotten several questions recently about harvesting small grains and peas for a forage crop. I know many people are working closely with seed and feed reps who help their customers hit the targets they need as close as they can, usually based on goals and targets identified when the decisions are made to plant the crop. Some people have made decisions to harvest small grains for forage as they see how the alfalfa and forage inventories are turning out. Regional Extension Educator Doug Holland offered a little bit of discussion about this at the small grain plot tour near Marty in Stearns County on Tuesday. He compared it to alfalfa and grass hay harvest decisions. As the crop matures and grows, you gain tonnage, and feed quality, measured by protein or digestibility, drops. So for a particular feed use, you think about the place where you get the quality that meets the need, balanced with some tonnage that works as well. Then, as with harvesting alfalfa or grass hay, the weather is often the trump card. The strategy often is that when you get within the range of your feed quality targets, you might harvest when the first good weather opportunity comes around. That's been a little tough to find this year. Where small grain is mixed with peas, the aim is to make harvest decisions based on the maturity and condition of the small grain. When the goal is to use this forage as a part of a milk cow ration, the recommendation generally is to cut it when the small grain is in the boot stage. This means you can feel the seed head coming up inside the stem. One article shows for oats 20% protein in the boot stage, 14% in the milk stage, and 11% in the dough stage, while the dry matter tonnage moved from 1.6 in the boot stage to 3 ton in the milk stage to 4 ton in the dough stage. Obviously, there's a lot of variation in what these numbers can be like, and then of course you watch how it feeds with the cattle. We might wait for the milk to early dough stage for dry cows, growing heifers, or beef cattle to pick up some tonnage, depending on other feed materials being used. It's good to remember that things change pretty fast, from the first kernels peeking out to fully headed to pollination, then milk stage and getting doughy. So again, keeping an eye on the weather for an opportunity to get it cut and off the field in good condition is often more important than looking for the perfect stage. I think this is even more important when small grain is a cover crop to alfalfa. In this case, what's good for the alfalfa should drive the harvest decisions. The last thing you want is a swath that lays in the field for a week or more on top of tender young alfalfa seedlings that you want to get up and get going. I know some people are done with this task and others might be watching yet, and the weather forecasts haven't gotten much easier to interpret yet. I'm Dan Martins with U of M Extension, and I commend you for your efforts to play the cards the best you can as you see what you get dealt and to learn from each year's experience.
At week's end, the weather pattern that will be upon us, slower moving systems.
And a diminishing likelihood of severe thunderstorms as we see a building western ridge and a strengthening eastern trough taking us back to a weather pattern that we haven't experienced for some time.
That means extremely hot weather moving into the west, says USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey. As for other areas,
much cooler conditions across much of the central and eastern United States, and instead of fast-moving severe thunderstorms, we'll see more general wet and dry patterns.
And in the west, hot and dry, and heavier rain developing across the central and eastern Corn Belt into the mid-Atlantic states. For USDA Radio, Susan Carter, Washington, D.C.
June is Home Ownership Month, but year-round, the USDA's Rural Development helps thousands of Americans acquire homes of their own. Susan Carter with the USDA has more.
To qualify for rural home ownership, you have to live in an area where there's
less than 35,000 in population across the country. In some places, because it's an MSA, it has to be less than 20,000.
Rural Housing Administrator Tony Hernandez.
So first you have to be in a rural part of the country. And if you want to know where that is, you go to our website, rd.gov, and you look on there for home ownership, click on the button. You can actually put an address in there, and it'll tell you if that property qualifies for our products, which makes it nice and easy for people to do that first step for home ownership. Is this the right place for me to buy a house?
After that,
then you either call the lender, or if you come into a direct loan, you call our state director's office.
And that's where a USDA Rural Development representative will help prepare rural residents for home ownership.
Some of our folks aren't ready yet, and so what we do is say, you're not ready yet, but boy, we're going to work with you to get you ready. And that's why we partner with nonprofits. We call them packagers. The packager will help review their application, get them ready. go through home buyer education, try to make sure they be a successful homeowner, and then they give them to the right product, whether it's with a lender or directly with us. So what we're trying to do is find the right customer so they can find the right house so they can change their lives.
But to qualify, you have to have good credit.
Now, we also give loans to folks that have a little more, they're good credit, but not as good credit. It's still good credit, what we call credit worthy. So we provide opportunities for folks that are credit worthy to buy homes. So we're just looking for the right folks with the right partner to change their lives. This year we're celebrating what we call the 50,000 self-help homes.
So why is USDA involved, you may be asking?
Housing is a conduit to family, neighborhood, and community. So what USDA does is trying to create a way to let people do what they want to do best, which is create communities. And to do that, housing is the conduit for that. So we try to find ways to give people a way to get out of lower income into the middle class. Home ownership does that.
Hernandez says it's more than buying a house, it's buying a future.
We're working with these nonprofits, and some of the nonprofits we work with are called Rural Community Assistance Corporation, Little Dixie Community Action, NCAL, and the Florida Nonprofit Housing are some folks who we're working with across the country to try to help folks build their own homes. And that's a product for folks that want to reduce their costs by providing sweat equity. What sweat equity is, where they provide close to 60% of the labor costs to actually build their home. Not only are they opening the door to home ownership, they're actually building that door as they go along. And so they learn new skills. And so through this celebration of self-help, which is this year, 50,000, the Secretary recently kicked that off across the United States. And so we're going to 34 different states this year to celebrate self-help housing.
Which is in all 50 states and territories. For USDA Radio, Susan Carter, Washington, D.C.
Will hog producers continue to boost production over the next year, even as hog prices are falling? Well, we may get some clues to answer that question this coming Friday when USDA releases its quarterly Hogs and Pigs report. Mark Harris with USDA's Statistics Service told us over 8,000 farms have been surveyed for this highly anticipated report.
We've transitioned over the last couple of years with diseases affecting the industry, and everybody was very interested in seeing where the herd is headed.
And USDA's Outlook Chairman Seth Meyer says this report will do that.
Because that'll tell us farrowing intentions for the rest of the year, which will clue us in on what supplies will be in the first two quarters of 2016, really setting the stage to say, okay, are we going to, if margins are good now, will we expand quite a bit and bringing extra supplies in, or will we have moderated growth which supports prices through 2016?
The USDA Hog and Pig report comes out this Friday, the 26th at 3 p.m. Eastern. USDA's forecast for pork production and hog prices will follow 2 weeks later. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington.